Hey, I'm Lucy, also go by Benji, and I'm here continuing the Gender 101 for I'm Here, I'm Queer, What the Hell Do I Read? And I'm here with awesome panel. Oh, sorry.
Nenu.
Emmi and BJ.
So, next topic to throw out to you all. I know that growing up, we have lots of expectations. There's a lot of stereotypes as what it means to be a queer person, what it means to be a trans person, what it means to be a gender non-conforming person. In addition to the more standard, like, what does it mean to be a man or a woman and what we're supposed to do. I was wondering if anyone had stories they wanted to share about that.
I think in the prior panel that we had with another person, Frankie mentioned about being a genderqueer, Latina genderqueer, Salvadorian genderqueer, right? For me, it was similar to like knowing that my body itself like wouldn't necessarily show what in my head genderqueer meant or what I wanted to be either. Like I wanted to be this thin, like, you know, androgynous looking person that people wouldn't even bother to disagree with when they came out and said, oh, I identify as genderqueer. Because I find myself often being questioned by other people, and I didn't fit that stereotype of and I felt for a long time that I couldn't identify as a genderqueer because of that. Because my body doesn't look like the stereotypical gender non-conforming person, quote unquote. At least that's how I felt back then, until I started to come to terms with myself and my identity. But pretty much that was the one that was keeping me away from my expression. If I don't look thin and androgynous, you know, enough, then I can't be genderqueer, because yeah, nobody else is gonna think I am or respect the fact that I am. So it took me a while to come into terms with that because of that reason.
Or if you wear a wig and heels or something.
Yeah, and sometimes I wear a wig and heels and, you know, hey, which I do all the time. No, but yeah, it takes a while. Like, it's hard to break those stereotypes that, like, people have in our communities, and at some point we just internalize so much of that it's hard to really come through with ourselves and really own who we are. But I'm glad that there's people out there, there's people here that are willing to go through that, and like, well, pretty much we don't have an option. so we go through that journey and like, and hope to like really be ourselves and feel free of our of the rest of the other stuff that is put out there for us. So that's the one.
I think one of the big misconceptions that I've had to deal with a lot is people's beliefs of the mutual exclusivity of certain terms, and being one thing means that you're this, this, and this. So it's like the second you try and say, you know, or I would try and say that, you know, I wish I'd been a woman, or that I felt I was transgendered. It's like, okay, well, that means you're here. So if you're a guy but you want to have a girl's body, that must mean that you're gay. You know, it's just kind of, they always try and draw these lines based off of one point. It was like, no, I could be physically male, express physically male, like women, and still be transgendered. You know, it's not the straight line everywhere, you know. And when I first ended up being forced out, that was the exact experience I had. I was dating someone, I told their family at dinner, you know, just because we all felt really close. I was like, yeah, you know, I really wish I'd been born a woman. And 3 days later, I was single. Without much any word or notice. I went on a vacation, just timing-wise, happened to work out that way, for about a week. Right after that happened, I came back, and the entire school was under the belief I was gay. And no one questioned that, because, well, if you're a boy and you wish you were a woman, women like men, so you must like men, so you now have to be gay. It's, yeah.
I would say if I had to pick one particular misconception that I deal with a lot, either from friends, from family, but especially from my parents, is that if I take on, like, their beliefs specifically, but if I take on a certain label, that automatically means certain things. Like, for example, if I take on the label of woman, to them that would mean like a lot of the other things that I've done in my life are invalidated. Like, oh, you can't be a woman because you have a degree in hard science, or you can't be a woman because you took karate, or like you shouldn't be worried about, you know, being attacked because, you know, you trained in martial arts. And I'm like, what? What? And so the biggest misconception that I deal with on a daily basis is that because of my identity, people try and force me into specific boxes. And my life really recently has just been saying to people like, no, just because I identify this way doesn't mean that I have to do this. It doesn't mean I have to wear a dress. It doesn't mean I have to wear makeup. It doesn't mean I have to fit, like, for example, the conception of what it means to be a drag queen, because that's totally different from what I am. Like, I can be feminine in certain ways. I can be masculine in other ways. I can, you know, like, drink beer and ride motorcycles and play guitar, but I can still at the same time really enjoy makeup and wear heels and, you know, have girls' night out and still be myself and still have just as valid an identity if I only did, like, one half of those things. And, like, the thing that always kills me is when people realize that they can pick and they don't have to choose one or the other, and that it is a spectrum. I mean, I feel like so often we're sort of forced into these boxes, whether it's in paperwork or just in the way society presents our choices to us. Like, there's no other option, or there's no, like, none of this option. And so just dealing with that and constantly, you know, reaffirming my identity to other people, and just, you know, telling them and knowing that I do have the right to be who I am and that I'm totally legitimate in having this identity has been, like, just the misconception I want to throw off. So.
Yeah, sort of what you were saying, tying into things that you had both said. For me, I get really frustrated when people think of genderqueer as a very small term, because I realize that a lot of the visibility has been around transmasculine, small-bodied, female-assigned, able-bodied, white, college-educated, yeah, nice long list of things that have been the most visible, and I don't think that they deserve to be, but I realize that I fit a lot of those things. But even so, just because I fit a lot of them, people have then, you know, there are folks who have this idea of what it means to be genderqueer, and I still don't fit that. Like, there are a lot of folks for whom genderqueer is a stepping stone to being a trans man, and I'm just like, that's really not true. Like, there was something I read recently of someone writing a vignette somewhere, and they described genderqueer as a transmasculinity, and that just made me irate. Like, this was a queer person, queer knowledgeable person, went to one of the Seven Sisters colleges and was sort of writing against the term genderqueer, saying that it wasn't open enough, and I agree, there's lots of ways that it could be more open, but to call it a transmasculinity just made me so mad, because for me, like, I do not identify as transmasculine at all. Like, that is just not a term that I feel reflects my experience, and to have someone be like, oh, well, you're just halfway there, like, no, it's not. I mean, I like to have that as a possibility, an option for the future, but to have it compulsory just makes me so mad.
And along those same lines, I think you can apply that same idea to a lot of different labels and identities. Like, for example, being genderqueer or being gender variant is not, it's not a foregone conclusion that if you have that identity, you're just really going to end up as like a trans man or trans woman. And if you identify as bisexual, for example, it's not like you're going to automatically end up as gay or lesbian and you're going to, like, pick a side. Like, it doesn't work like that. I mean, people's identities change and people's identities grow and they sort of shift, but it's not like, that's not to say that, like, oh, if you have this label, you're definitely going this one way and there's one right way to do it, and if you don't do it that way, then you're just, who knows what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
No.
Then we lock you up.
I think for anything, it's always very important for people to be open to self-identity. When we talk about self-identification, what we mean is like, like, it's a person, an individual identifying. So it is really important for people to acknowledge that and know that one definition is not all of our definitions, and that genderqueer can be defined in so many ways. that we just need, the person, whoever is asking, needs to be open enough to know that the answer that they get won't be the general answer. It's not clean cut. It's not just one little package wrapped with a bow on top that explains what genderqueer means. I mean, if you're listening to all of us talk, you can get the point of that is super diverse in many different ways of how we explain ourselves and our identity, than just one straight answer of what genderqueer should be.
Speaking of what should be, something that drove me absolutely nuts, Miranda. I don't know if you guys remember the whole metrosexual thing that was really big for a little while.
Still is just
It drove me nuts being within this community, because what they were really saying when they did all this, metrosexual is, I appreciate gay culture without being gay. And when they say gay culture, they're talking about effeminate culture. Is what they're saying when they say this. So basically they're talking about gender nonconforming, genderqueer, and male, female, transgendered topics. And instead of it becoming this huge stepping stone for learning and understanding and acceptance, it became a token fashion thing like feng shui gardens that everyone could think was cool for a while, make fun of, and walk away from. And it upset me so much to finally have what could have been a learning experience about, hey, the rules about gender aren't all right, and it didn't go there. And it upset me so much. Sorry, slightly off tangent to rant, but
I don't think so.
I think it was right on target.